Genesis 6 is a storyline that at first seems quite odd, but when we put it in its covenantal context, in the context of Scripture, we begin to see a story emerge that we might otherwise miss. Now, we see Adam and Eve, we see Cain and Abel, we see Lamech, and these other characters present themselves. But then Seth is born, and a godly line begins to turn back to the Lord. Now, what we see in Genesis 6 is the opposite, that now men begin to seek violence. And not just any man, but these men of renown. That's what this term means, or some say heroes, but it's really these men of renown. These are men that are warriors. These are warrior kings in the context of the Jewish context of these verses. So sometimes people think perhaps aliens or fallen angels come down and sleep with women. I don't think this is the context. I think it's trying to show the godly line of Seth now mixed with this ungodly line. These tyrants, as we'll see later, this term Nephilim is after the flood, after they've all been killed. So it can't just be these fallen angels here. This term means something afterwards. So these warrior tyrants, these men of renown, literally these men of great name, we don't know any of their names. Whose name do we know? From the text, only Noah's. So the text does kind of a play on words, kind of a play on storylines. The great men, the heroes, the warriors, the powerful, these men of renown, no one in Scripture or outside of Scripture remembers their name. But this lowly servant of God, one who finds favor with God. In fact, the only human on the earth who's not corrupted by these men and their ways. And let's remember, their ways were ways of violence, the Scripture says, and all their ways, all the ways of all the men and women had become wicked. And so what's likely happening here is these warrior kings are taking multiple wives, like Lamech. They're following in his footsteps rather than the footsteps of Seth, the godly line. And they begin to corrupt the people. They begin to practice polygamy and tyranny and just taking what they want by force and violence and rape. And it's not just that they do it, but that the people begin to approve that this is correct behavior. And only Noah stands righteous before the Lord in not living this way. And so the bad news of our society is that corruption, that evil, that wickedness often is not only done by those who are the proponents or the perpetuators or the starters of those movements, but people pick up on these behaviors. People pick up on gangs. People pick up on prostitution or all these different things that sexualize women or try to make men prideful and powerful. These are the systems in place that people look after. And this is the sad story of humanity. But lest we think it's bad today, let us remember all the earth and world was filled with this. So much so that only Noah found favor with God, and only Noah ultimately was saved by the ark. There's spiritual implications that are vast in this, which we'll get to. But this, this picture of water and the ark, of baptism of Christ, of this spiritual house that God builds for his people, these are all things that have deep theological significance, which we'll see in the next chapters. But let us remember, let us be like Noah, standing against the grain, because God mocks those who are powerful. These powerful kings, no one remembers. No one's going to remember these people today that are powerful. They're social media influencers. Their names are not going to be remembered unless what they do is for the glory of God. May it be for us as well.